December 10th, 1964, Studio 4, NBC Burbank. The orchestra was playing. The cameras were rolling. 30 million people were watching. Judy Garland stopped singing. Mid-verse, mid-word, just stopped. Her voice cracked, broke, disappeared. Tears streamed down her face, ruining makeup that had taken 2 hours to apply. Mascara running, lipstick smeared. The carefully constructed facade of Judy Garland, America's sweetheart, collapsing in real time on live television. Dean Martin stood next to her, microphone in hand. The orchestra still playing, everyone waiting. The director in the control room shouting, "Cut to commercial! Cut to commercial now!" But Dean didn't move, didn't keep singing, didn't make a joke, didn't do any of the things Dean Martin was supposed to do. He stopped, put down his microphone, waved at the band to stop playing. Silence. 30 million people held their breath. Dean stepped closer to Judy, put his arm around her shoulders, leaned in close enough that only she could hear, and whispered 7 words. Nobody else heard them, not the crew, not the audience, not the millions watching at home, just Judy. And whatever Dean Martin said in that moment changed everything. Not just for Judy, for everyone watching, for the entire concept of what television could be. Because what happened next wasn't a performance, it was the truth. To understand this moment, you have to understand who Judy Garland was in December 1964. She was 42 years old, had been performing for 40 years, started at 2 years old as Frances Ethel Gum, part of the Gum Sisters vaudeville act, 3 little girls singing for pennies in small-town theaters. By 13, MGM had her, signed her, changed her name to Judy Garland, put her to work immediately. She was talented, extraordinarily talented, voice like nothing they'd ever heard, big, powerful, emotional, could make you cry with a single note. But she wasn't beautiful, not by Hollywood standards, too short, too curvy, not glamorous enough, not thin enough. So MGM fixed her. Pills, amphetamines to suppress appetite, to keep her working 18-hour gays, to keep her thin, barbiturates to help her sleep after the amphetamines wouldn't let her. By 15, Judy Garland was addicted. By 17, she was Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, became a star, an icon, America's sweetheart, the girl who sang Somewhere Over the Rainbow and made everyone believe dreams could come true. But behind the scenes, Judy was dying. The pills never stopped. The work never stopped. MGM owned her, controlled her, used her. When she gained weight, they gave her more pills, stricter diets, told her she was fat, ugly, worthless. When she complained, they threatened to fire her, to sue her, to ruin her. When she tried to quit, they reminded her of her contract, of her mother who depended on her, of her siblings who needed her. Judy kept working, kept performing, kept being America's sweetheart while she fell apart inside. 5 marriages by 1964, all failed. Multiple suicide attempts, one with a razor blade in a bathroom, another with pills in a hotel room. Each time someone found her, each time they saved her, each time she went back to work. Bankruptcy, the IRS chasing her for unpaid taxes, managers who'd stolen from her, studios that had used her up and thrown her away. By 1964, Judy Garland was living in London, trying to restart her career, trying to stay alive, trying to prove she still mattered. She was overweight, looked older than 42, Years of pills and booze and pain had aged her. Her voice was still powerful, but rougher, damaged. When Dean Martin's people called, offered her a guest spot on his variety show, Judy said yes immediately. Needed the money, needed the exposure, needed America to remember she existed, needed to prove she could still perform. Dean Martin's reality. Dean was different, but also the same. Born Dino Cricchetti in 1917, poor Italian immigrant family in Steubenville, Ohio. Worked his way up from nothing, boxing, dealing cards in illegal casinos, singing in smoky clubs for tips. Changed his name, changed his image, created a persona. The drunk, the cool cat, the guy who didn't care about anything. It worked. With Jerry, he became a star. Comedy teams were huge in the 1940s and 1950s. Dean and Jerry were the biggest. Movies, radio, nightclubs, television. Then Jerry left in 1956. Everyone said Dean was finished, said he was nothing without Jerry, just the straight man, the guy who stood there while Jerry was funny. They were wrong. Dean became even bigger. Solo records, movies, The Rat Pack with Frank Sinatra and Sammy Davis Jr., Vegas residencies that sold out months in advance. By 1964, The Dean Martin Show was the #1 variety show on television. 30 million viewers every Thursday night. But the persona was exhausting. Dean had to be drunk Dean every time he appeared in public, had to hold a drink, had to act like he didn't care, had to pretend everything was easy. In reality, Dean was sober, disciplined, professional. The drink he carried on stage was apple juice. The stumbling was choreographed. The slurred speech was acting. Nobody knew. The audience thought Dean Martin was a drunk who happened to be talented, a guy who partied all night and somehow showed up the next day and performed.
What they didn't see was the man who went home every night to his family, who worried about his kids, who worked hard, who was tired, so tired of pretending. Dean Martin and Judy Garland had something in common. They were both dying inside, both pretending to be okay, both drowning in personas that protected them from the world but also trapped them in performances they couldn't escape. The song choice. December 1964. Judy flew from London to Los Angeles, arrived 3 days before the show, needed time to adjust, to prepare, to become Judy Garland again. Dean's producers asked what she wanted to sing, a duet with Dean, something romantic, something that would show off both voices. Dean suggested The Man That Got Away, Judy's signature song from A Star Is Born, her comeback film in 1954, the role that earned her an Oscar nomination. The performance, everyone said, proved she was still a star. Dean thought it would honor her, thought she'd love revisiting her triumph. What he didn't know was what that song meant to Judy, what it represented. A Star Is Born was about a woman whose husband, a famous actor, destroys himself with alcohol, loses his career, becomes dependent on her success, eventually walks into the ocean and drowns himself. Judy had lived that story. Her third husband, Sid Luft, had produced the film. Their marriage was falling apart during filming. Sid was drinking, gambling, losing money, becoming bitter about Judy's success. The parallels between the film and her life were painful, unbearable. And the song, The Man That Got Away, was about loving someone self-destructive, about watching them destroy everything, about being unable to save them. Judy had sung it hundreds of times, but it never got easier. Every time she relived the pain, the loss, the helplessness of loving someone who's dying. She agreed to sing it anyway, because she needed this job, needed this exposure, needed to be professional. Rehearsal, December 8th. Judy arrived at NBC Studios in Burbank 2 days before the show. Rehearsal time. Dean was already there. They'd met before, casually, at parties, industry events, but never worked together, never really talked. Dean greeted her warmly. "Judy, thanks for doing this." "Of course." Her voice was nervous, eager to please. Dean sensed it, the desperation, the need to be wanted. He recognized it because he'd seen it in other performers, in people who'd been used up by the industry and spat out. They ran through the duet. Dean had arranged it beautifully, his smooth baritone complementing Judy's powerful voice. The harmonies were perfect. But Dean noticed something. During rehearsal, Judy's eyes would fill with tears. She'd blink them back, keep singing, stay professional, but they were there. Dean didn't comment, figured she was just emotional, connecting to the song, giving it feeling. He didn't realize Judy was barely holding on, that she'd taken pills before rehearsal just to function, that she was terrified of falling apart on live television in front of millions, that this might be her last chance, that if she failed, nobody would hire her again, that she'd be finished. They rehearsed twice, sounded beautiful. Dean was pleased. "You still got it, Judy. You're gonna blow them away." Judy smiled, that practiced smile, the one she'd been using for 40 years. "I hope so." Show night, December 10th, 1964. Judy arrived 3 hours early, needed time to do her makeup, to hide the exhaustion, the age, the damage, time to take the pills that would get her through, time to prepare herself to become Judy Garland. Dean arrived an hour before, his usual routine, professional, prepared. He stopped by Judy's dressing room, knocked. "You okay?" Judy looked up from her makeup mirror. "Fine, just nervous." Dean nodded. "You'll be great. You always are." Judy's smile wavered. "Thanks for saying that." Dean saw something in her eyes. Fear, desperation, the look of someone drowning. He'd seen it before in other performers, in people who'd been broken by this business. But he didn't know what to say, didn't know how to help. So he just smiled back. "See you out there." The performance begins. The show started at 8 p.m. Pacific time. Dean's monologue, some comedy bits, guest performances, everything normal, professional. Then came the duet. Dean introduced her. "Ladies and gentlemen, one of the greatest singers in the world, Judy Garland." The audience erupted, applauded loudly. They loved Judy, remembered her from The Wizard of Oz, from her concerts, from her comebacks. They wanted her to succeed, wanted her to be okay. Judy walked on stage, smiling, waving, looking confident. But inside, she was screaming. The lights were too bright, the audience too big, the stakes too high. Dean took her hand, led her to center stage. The orchestra started. The Man That Got Away. Dean started singing his part, smooth, perfect, effortless. Judy came in on her verse, her voice powerful, still incredible after everything. The audience was mesmerized. This was magic. 2 legends, 1 song, live television. They sang the first verse together, harmonizing beautifully. Dean glanced at Judy. She was smiling, performing, being Judy Garland.
Maybe she'd be okay. Maybe he'd worried for nothing. Then they reached the second verse, Judy's solo, the emotional climax of the song, the moment where the character realizes the man she loved is gone forever. Judy started singing, her voice strong, then it cracked, just slightly. Dean noticed. Judy kept going, pushed through, but her voice cracked again, this time more noticeably. Dean looked at her, saw tears forming, not acting tears, real ones. Judy was trying so hard to keep singing, to finish the song, to be professional. But the tears were coming, streaming down her face, ruining her makeup. Her voice broke completely. She stopped singing mid-verse, just stopped, stood there crying on live television in front of 30 million people. The breakdown. The orchestra kept playing, confused, waiting. The director in the control room panicked. What do we do? Cut to commercial. The cameras stayed on Judy, crying, breaking down. Her worst nightmare, her greatest fear, losing control, showing everyone she wasn't okay, that she'd never been okay. The studio audience sat in stunned silence. This wasn't part of the show. This was real. This was Judy Garland falling apart in front of them. Dean Martin stood next to her, still holding his microphone, the band still playing, everyone waiting to see what would happen. Dean could have done many things. Could have kept singing, covered for her, made a joke, cut to commercial, saved the show, saved himself. But Dean Martin saw something in Judy Garland that made him stop. He saw himself, not literally, but emotionally. He saw someone who'd been performing so long they'd forgotten how to be human, someone who'd been pretending so long they'd lost themselves, someone who was drowning in the persona everyone expected while dying inside. Dean pretended to be drunk. Judy actually was. Dean pretended not to care. Judy cared too much. But they were both trapped, both exhausted, both dying from the weight of who they were supposed to be. The 7 words. Dean stopped singing, put down his microphone, waved at the band. They stopped playing. The stage went silent. 30 million people held their breath. Dean stepped closer to Judy, put his arm around her shoulders, gently, like a friend, like someone who understood. Judy was still crying, couldn't look at him, couldn't look at the audience. This was over. Her career, her life, everything. Dean leaned in close, so only Judy could hear, and whispered 7 words. Nobody else heard them, not the audience, not the crew, just Judy. And whatever he said made her gasp, made her look up at him, made her see something. Recognition, understanding, someone who knew, who really knew what it felt like to be broken, to pretend, to carry the weight of everyone's expectations while falling apart inside. Judy's crying changed, not sad anymore, something else. Relief, release, permission. Dean kept his arm around her, looked at the audience, his voice gentle. Judy's tired. She's been performing since she was 2 years old. 40 years of giving everything, of being perfect, of never being allowed to be tired. Pause. So tonight, we're going to do something different. Instead of pretending everything's okay, we're going to be honest. The audience didn't know how to react. Dean continued, Judy Garland is the greatest singer I've ever worked with, but she's also human, and humans get tired, humans hurt, humans cry. He looked at Judy, and that's okay. Judy's truth. Judy wiped her eyes, looked at Dean, looked at the audience, and did something she'd never done before in 40 years of performing. She told the truth. I'm sorry. I'm so tired. I've been trying to be Judy Garland, trying to be what everyone wants, trying to be perfect. Pause. And I can't do it anymore. The audience was silent. Judy continued, I love singing. I love performing. I love you all, but I'm exhausted. And I'm scared. Her voice broke. Scared I'm not good enough anymore. Scared I'm too old, too broken. Scared you'll stop loving me if I'm not perfect. The silence continued. Then one person started clapping, then another, then the entire studio audience. Standing ovation. Not for a performance, for honesty, for courage, for humanity. Judy looked shocked, confused. They're applauding.
Dean smiled. They love you, Judy, not because you're perfect, because you're real. Judy started crying again, but different. Grateful tears. Healing tears. Dean looked at the audience. Should we try this again? The audience cheered. Dean turned to the band. From the top, gentlemen, but slower, gentler. The second performance. The orchestra started playing again, The Man That Got Away. Slower tempo, more tender. Dean started singing, his voice soft, supportive. After a few bars, Judy joined him, her voice broken, cracked, imperfect, but beautiful. More beautiful than any technically perfect performance, because it was real. They sang together, not as a performance, as something else. Two broken people holding each other up. Dean supporting Judy when her voice faltered. Judy finding strength she didn't know she had. They finished the song. The final notes hung in the air. Silence. Then eruption. The studio audience on their feet, cheering, crying. Many of them crying because they'd witnessed something extraordinary. Not a perfect performance, a moment of truth. Backstage. Judy turned to Dean, hugged him. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for seeing me." Dean hugged her back. "Thank you for trusting me." They walked off stage together, the audience still applauding, still crying. When they got backstage, Judy was shaking. "That was the most terrifying thing I've ever done." Dean nodded. "I know, but it was also the most honest." Judy looked at him. "What you whispered, those 7 words, how did you know?" Dean smiled, sad but genuine. "Because I'm dying inside too, just in a different way." Judy stared at him. "You? But you're Dean Martin. You're cool. You're fine. You don't care about anything." Dean shook his head. "That's the character, Judy. That's not me. The real me goes home every night and wonders how long I can keep pretending. How long until people see through it. How long until I break." Pause. "We're not that different, you and me. We're both trapped in personas we created to survive. And they're killing us." Judy sat down, processing. "All this time, I thought I was alone. Thought I was the only one who couldn't handle it." Dean sat next to her. "You're not alone. We're all pretending, all dying inside. Some of us are just better at hiding it." Judy looked at him. "Those 7 words, what you said, you want me to tell you?" Dean met her eyes. "You want me to tell you?" Judy thought about it, then shook her head. "No, I want to keep them private, between us." Dean nodded. "Okay." They sat in silence for a moment. Then Judy spoke. "I've been in this business 40 years, and tonight is the first time I've ever been honest on stage. The first time I've ever been myself. The first time I've ever admitted I'm not okay." Dean smiled. "How did it feel?" Judy smiled back through her tears. "Terrifying and freeing, both at the same time." Dean stood up. "That's the truth. It's always both."